course, the 60s were very, very tumultuous time. Kennedy was assassinated and the Watts riots, and then around the time I graduated from college, Robert F. Kennedy, and that was around the same time that Vietnam was building, and I was being very attractive to my draft board for some reason. I had accomplished a lot in college, and at the pinnacle of what I had accomplished, kind of looked in a mirror figuratively and realized that I was miserably unhappy. I was looking for idyllic settings, and the closest thing to Hawaii was Laguna Beach. And in the meantime, I was constantly being introduced to this practice everywhere I went. When I got down to Laguna, I got there around noontime, and 2 weeks prior, I had taken a friend down to help him find a place. And we had stayed overnight in this apartment with these two girls. And so when I went down that particular time, I looked across the street, and there was one of the girls talking to the gas station attendant. And I said, wow, what a coincidence. I ran across the street, reintroduced myself, and she said, why don't you stay with us while you're getting settled? And I did. And when I walked into their apartment, there was this altar with a Gohanzen. And, so it was just, I couldn't get away from it. And so I wanted to date her. She wouldn't date me unless I went to a meeting. I decided I would try it. Early in my practice, actually, when I actually decided to go in if I was drafted, inducted. But I knew instead of going to Canada, I was going to go in as a non-combatant conscientious objector, so I had to apply all over again. The human revolution was just a very, very powerful expression of confidence and faith for the creation of something of universal value and positive. And the relationship between Daisaku Ikeda and Jose Toda was really striking to me. And the more I read, not just the Human Revolution, but the guidance memo, and my district was sending me the World Tribune and Living Buddhism. I didn't even realize it, but in hindsight, he was becoming my mentor, without my even knowing it. The more I experienced from my practice, the life condition that I experienced and enjoyed in my practice, even in the hellish circumstances, was the proof. Right after the Tet Offensive in '69, there were a lot of slots for medics open. Ultimately, I ran the dispensary for this medevac hospital, and it was a 44-bed medevac hospital. I doled out messages, cleaned minor frag wounds, gave 10,000 vaccinations for penicillin or ampicillin or whatever it was, and that was my job. Another benefit was that I was made the mail clerk, which gave me my own little room where I could chant unobstructed. Well, my Gohanzen, I never unrolled it because we were getting mortars from the village on a regular basis. So I always had it rolled up, and I had it in a sling hanging in my armpit the entire time I was there.
These mortar shellings, was that weekly or daily or?
Probably once every 10 days. So I never took any chances with my Gohanzen.
You've talked about introducing people to the practice while you were stationed in Vietnam. And
there were a number of conscientious objector / medics assigned to my company. And then there were other medics who weren't conscientious objectors. They were regular soldiers who got that particular designation, our job description. When I first got there, everybody was just scared. Definitely strangers in a strange land. I couldn't understand why people were drawn to me. And ultimately, it just led to conversations. And I was getting the World Tribune and the Seikyo Times delivered, and I started having study meetings in the mess hall.
Describing from Vietnam to the publications in the U.S.
Yeah, they had 7 or 8 guys learning about Buddhism. It was really quite interesting. And I went to Japan 4 times from Vietnam, and on 2 occasions I took guys with me, one of whom received the Gohanzen in Japan.
Can you talk a little bit about the Gakkai Grunt and what that is?
A grunt is a lowly infantryman. Whether an infantryman or not, just a soldier who was on the ground in the midst of it all. We were kind of seeking each other out. We would get letters from the States because we were asking who are the other GIs, who are the other members who are assigned here. I found Clay Osman and Louis Loomis. Clay was in Saigon, Louis was in Da Nang or somewhere in the middle of the country. And then we got together at the Saigon chapter study exam and decided we should do a newsletter and try to contact every GI in country that we could get a hold of. And so I was the one that had the equipment, so I could do the mimeograph. No such thing as a Xerox machine back then. And so we each contributed articles. It was no big deal to just copy an article out of the Seikyo Times and actually include experiences of people that we were introducing. One of my jobs was to drive prescription sunglasses to deliver them to different bases around Quang Tri province. And another job was to take doctors over to the hospital ship where the really seriously wounded were and where the body bags were kept for deliverance back to the United States. And one occasion, I took one of the doctors over there, and he was walking around because he had to sign the death certificates, and he had to unzip the bags. And there's this one kid, I purposely looked at his toe tag, and he had a whole side of his body blown out from like an RPG rocket. And his name was Tom, and he was 21 years old. And it just hit me, all of the family and friends that would be impacted by his death. The ripple effect of one person's life being saved or being lost. For what purpose? The contrast and the hope that this practice gave me, or my experiences gave me, being a practitioner over there, was really profound.
I remember you sharing how there was one experience where you felt particularly protected.
I showed you the photo of my little room, right, where my bunk was up against the wall, and the other side of that hooch was the kind of a pharmaceutical hooch, where the med cap ambulance would go into the village every Wednesday and treat villagers and then come back. And the sergeant in charge was white. He'd park the ambulance in front of the hooch and go eat dinner. He and this cook, a black cook, had just a real vendetta with each other. I was just recovering from salmonella, and the doctor said that you really shouldn't be going anywhere. And I said, I'm really going, I don't care what. Fortunately, my fever reduced to 100.5 the morning I was supposed to fly out, which was that morning to go to Japan. And so that night after dinner, the cook came around with an M16 around the side of the ambulance, and the sergeant was coming down the steps to unload the ambulance, and he opened fire. Full automatic, and there were bullet holes in the wall where I would have been sitting doing gongyo after dinner. That had a profound impact. I really understood protection of the Gohonzon in my practice.
That's really incredible, and just thinking about if you've never experienced war, you could easily just have this image that people on one side are all kind of there for each other.
At the same time, it was really, you're out for yourself. You're out to survive. But a lot of heroics were performed under unnecessary circumstances. I learned something from everything. And in fact, it was the process of a revelation of what this practice meant in direct contrast, in direct opposition to what I was in the middle of.
You were able to, keep your life condition up while you were in Vietnam, and you mentioned that members in your district in the U.S. were actually still supporting you while you were out there.
Yeah.
What impact did that have on you?
It shrank the distance between home and where I was. It was really rewarding to realize that what I was doing was actually encouraging to them.
Out of the ordinary, but there's this beautiful letter that you showed me from your district. Would you mind reading a few of the messages that they shared with you? It sounds like many people wrote different messages to you.
Having lots of Sancho Shima. Hope to hear from you soon. Take care. Love, Holly. Your letter was enjoyed, appreciated by all. I only hope we can live up to expectations. We really enjoyed the letter. Keep in touch. Take care. Keep chanting. It's really good knowing we have someone chanting in Nam. Keep it up. Your letter was beautiful. Keep the faith. Michael the barber. Hope you stay alive and keep others alive. Thomas. I do believe in the power of the ripple effect. There was a chapter in the Human Revolution, the original Human Revolution, called Ripples, and it impressed me that how one person changing their life, or one person hearing about Nam-myoho Renge Kyo influences the lives of everyone that they're related to or come in contact with or what have you, Sensei was here in 1990. He gave a speech at the NSA Executive Conference. He talked about Arthur Schlesinger, who was a historian, and his theory that history goes in 30-year cycles, because those 30-year cycles represent generations. And so he pointed out that 1960 was the start of one cycle, and the generation that came up is emerging in the 90s as a result of that 30-year cycle is going to have an influence on. And so if you look at 30 years from 1960 to 1990, then from 1990 to 2020, from that point of view, I have great hope that the youth that are coming up as a result of this 30-year cycle, and of course President Keita's target of 2030 kind of reinforces that for me, that this next generation will be the next generation of idealists who can shape and change the way the world looks at itself. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.